siguientes indicaciones de seguridad. Actualmente nos encontramos en el auditorio José Sánchez Villaseñor. En este momento, visualice las rutas de evacuación señalizadas en las puertas de entrada del auditorio y por la salida de emergencia ubicada del lado derecho del estrado. Localice la ruta de salida más cercana que le pueda llevar hacia el punto de reunión establecido en el Jardín de los Lobos. En caso de emergencia, se activará la alarma de evacuación. Al escucharla, guarde la calma y siga la ruta de salida que localizó y que le llevará al punto de reunión establecido en el Jardín de los Lobos. No corra, no grite y no empuje. Siga las instrucciones de las brigadas de evacuación. En caso de sismo, se activará la alerta sísmica. Al escucharla, guarde la calma. Resguárdese en su lugar o en las zonas de menor riesgo que están debidamente señalizadas. Evite desplazarse mientras perciba el movimiento. Existen objetos que pueden lastimarle en caso de que caigan. Posterior al sismo, siga las indicaciones de las brigadas de evacuación. El día de hoy, no tenemos algún simulacro programado, por lo que, en caso de escuchar la alarma de evacuación o la alerta sísmica, siga las instrucciones de las brigadas de evacuación. Por su atención, muchas gracias.
And my flights have been delayed almost every time, one of them 12 hours, one of them 24 hours. I was due to visit Japan at the beginning of July for a conference on AI in education. I got to Heathrow Airport at 5:30 in the morning, checked my phone, your flight's cancelled. I get in, it's so bad at the moment.
Segunda llamada.
How long would you like to have the answer? 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 1 minute?
We have 2 hours, so let's just,
Don't say that to an Italian,
yeah,
but okay.
Just let it flow and see what it takes. No? So I have questions.
Comenzamos. Tercera llamada, comenzamos. Muy buenas tardes, bienvenidos todos y todas al foro de Inteligencia Artificial. A continuación tendremos una mesa redonda con 5 ponentes y el Vicerrector como moderador. Los voy a presentar brevemente porque ya los habíamos presentado antes y mañana tendrán también contacto con ellos. Le damos la bienvenida a Chantal Mattar. She's an architect and generative designer working at the intersection of mixed media and architecture. Chantal has been teaching at various institutes such as UCLA, the Bartlett School of Architecture, Middle East Architecture Lab, Munster University, and more since 2000. Professor Wayne Holmes, he's an associate professor in the UCL Knowledge Lab at the University College London. His research takes a critical studies perspective to the teaching and application of artificial intelligence in education contexts and the ethical, human, and social justice implications. Welcome. Paolo Benanti, desde 2008 es docente en la Pontífica Universidad Gregoriana, en el Instituto Tecnológico de Asís y Pontificio, Colegio Leoniano en Anagli, sur de Lacio. Sus estudios se focalizan en la gestión de la innovación, Internet y el impacto de la era digital, las biotecnologías para el mejoramiento humano y la bioseguridad, las neurociencias y las neurotecnologías. Bienvenido. Minoru Asada, since 2019, he has been a specially appointed professor as a strategic advisor for the Symbiotic Intelligence System Research Center Open and Transdisciplinary Research Initiatives in Osaka University. In April 2021, he became a vice president of International Professional University of Technology in Osaka, keeping the position at Osaka University. Welcome. Edmond Awad, he is a senior lecturer, assistant professor in the Department of Economics and the Institute for Data Science and Artificial Intelligence at the University of Exeter in the UK. He is also an associate research scientist at the Max Planck Institute for Human Development, as Turing Fellow at Alan Turing Institute, and founding editorial board member in the AI and Ethics Journal in Springer Nature. Welcome to. And our Vicerrector, Dr. Alejandro Anaya, he is going to moderate the table. Thank you.
Gracias. Gracias, Araceli. Gracias a todas las personas que nos acompañan esta tarde. And also to everybody who is following the streaming. We are, I think, midway through our conference, so it's been an exciting day and a half, and we have another day and a half ahead still, so we hope that you will continue to come back to the presentations and the workshops. So you have given us in this day and a half loads of important information, definitions about what artificial intelligence is and what it is not, what it can do and what it cannot do, what it will be able to do in the future. You have shared with us ways in which artificial intelligence is being used in practice in different professional fields like design, architecture, the legal profession, media, education, and so forth. So we've been talking about that a lot. And you have also shared with us critical arguments about artificial intelligence, critical arguments about the ethical perils, the practical challenges of these technological trends, the impact on the distribution of power in society, the challenges regarding the interaction between humans and these systems that we are calling intelligent and that we are calling artificial. Being here at a university, we are obviously interested in taking these conversations, these reflections, these analyses, ideas, arguments, down to the specific field of higher education. So therefore, the aim of this roundtable, obviously, or this informal conversation that I hope we will be able to have. Therefore, the aim of this table is to think critically about the role of artificial intelligence in universities. So this is the university community, la comunidad universitaria of Ibero, and we are thinking about artificial intelligence, and we have to keep on thinking about it. So with your help, we will hopefully have more insights and more material to talk about and to think about. So I have a few kickoff questions, and so we can start this discussion, and then we can hopefully go back to the audience so they can also make questions and put issues on the table that come back to us, to the panel. And just informal conversation, quick answers if you can, so we can have different topics or different discussions. So I guess that the first point I want to put on the table is the commonplace comment about many things, including artificial intelligence, which is this commonplace assumption or comment is that artificial intelligence offers risks and opportunities. So even if it is like a commonplace, there's risks and opportunities in almost everything, But it might be a good way to start. So what do you think? What do you think, in your view, which are the key opportunities and the key risks or threats that AI has or poses to universities? And we can just, follow kind of the line. We can begin with Paolo.
Well, it's a huge question. Let me flip it. Let's start from opportunities. The first opportunity is if we understand, especially the last wave of artificial intelligence, large language model, as a wonderful interface with knowledge. Not as a knowledge producer, but as an interface, because with the LLM are able to be on really fast translator from different kind of knowledge. So I can ask to a system like a good LLM to explain me quantum theory in a language that biologists can understand. And the system make a good job. So in education, in which usually we have a relationship, a human relationship between the teacher or the professor and the student, LLM could be a wonderful interface to adapt the knowledge, tailor the knowledge to the different people that we have in front of us. It could be a new way to make it accessible, all the knowledge that usually a university produces in itself. Because it could be, for example, trained on all the paper, on all the books, on all the things that are owned or produced by a university.
So like a chat GPT, but with the knowledge produced by the university?
Let's be clear on that. ChatGPT is a demo made by OpenAI, and ChatGPT has a problem that it hallucinates. So the thing is, it's a mathematical calculation, actually. So when you give an input to ChatGPT, ChatGPT has to give you a result. The number of results are encoded like text. But if you ask to ChatGPT, for example, I did it, can you give me something about, and I give him a name of a cardinal. The cardinal was near me. It said that the cardinal was dead 1 year ago. I don't tell you what is the face of the cardinal at that time. Well, because the ChatGPT has no knowledge in the back. This is an emergent ability of the system because they work with a huge number of parameters. It looks like if ChatGPT has knowledge up to 2021, but it has no knowledge. So if you look at ChatGPT like LLM, we make a mistake. Okay? ChatGPT is a demo of an LLM to give a chatbot to interact with. But it's much, much more useful, for example, things like Bing integration of GPT or Perplexity AI or someone else, in which the LLM simply is an interface. I ask something, LLM translate as a research string, kept the better result from the knowledge, and produce a text from that sources that has no hallucination inside. Well, this really fast interface for knowledge, it's really good. Because I can ask to the system to present me the knowledge in a form that I decide. And this is wonderful, because I can simply make it more accessible, more diverse, more plural, the kind of knowledge that I produce. And this kind of tailoring presenting, of course, it's a possibility, it's something that we can define as a really good trait, but could be also a risk. Because I can simply push the knowledge in a form that could be used to shape one culture, to have a soft power on culture, to ignore minorities, diversity, and so on. So both sides are always present. It's a huge tool. And probably, in my perspective, this is one of the biggest innovation in human culture from the invention of the pressing machine for the book. Because it produced to the language something like the invention of the book produced in the early Renaissance. There is a really interesting book, Elizabeth Eisenstein, that work about the permanent Renaissance produced by the invention of the press, and there is also a Jesuit, Father Ong, that go in that direction. Well, we have now with LLM and GPT-like system something that could be of the same magnitude. A new invention of the press that produce new form of culture that need you competence to make it workable and accessible.
Okay. Hi. I'm going to be a little bit more focused on architecture in general and education. So using AI, as you were mentioning, has a lot of positives and negatives. It's a great tool. It's a very progressive evolution, tool that we are experiencing right now. So there is obviously a lot of negatives that are coming out of it and positives. But I'll start from the negatives and then wrap it up with the positives. Yeah. So I think in the education, if we are using AI broadly as architecture, for example, I think there is a risk of maybe getting a bit lazy on that sense and counting a lot on the machine to do all the production for us. This is one side that is a bit debatable, I think, at this stage. But from the positive point of view, I think using AI in education system will open up a lot of doors to work with other majors as well. Like I was mentioning in the conference yesterday that we'll have the opportunity to work with programmers, data scientists, so it'll open up a whole range of educational systems that we were not used to before. So it is a progressive evolution to our education. This is how I see it. So yeah, that would be my short answer. Thank you.
And do you see any risk in that?
Risk in working out with, I was mentioning that there is a risk if you're counting a lot on the machine of, lazy is just a very simple term to express that, but there is the risk of on counting a lot on the machine to go forward with the studies, etc. But is at the same time, we are being more efficient because the machine is helping us do our task, but at the same time, we have time to do other bits. Like we are more creative to do other tasks and other projects at the same time. So yeah, that is for me how I see it at the moment.
Fantastic.
Instead of talking about risk and benefits, I'm going to talk about a challenge. I think a challenge for universities is probably in teaching transferable skills, because that is going to be very important. I think there's a big concern about AI replacing humans in a lot of jobs. And many people say that, some economists say that it's actually parts of the jobs, right? And these are probably part of the job that could be more boring. There is an example that the economist David Autor mentioned about the automatic teller machines. So before the ATMs were created, you had the human tellers, right? You go to the bank, they count the money, they interact with you. And then when the ATMs were created and introduced, people were worried that maybe they're going to replace the bankers. But what happened is, these ATMs basically made it cheaper to create more, and to have even cheaper and more branches. At the same time, the regular human tellers moved to become in customer care because they have these social skills. They can deal with the customers. They have things that the ATM itself cannot do. So what happened is the ATMs basically took the boring part of the job, which is counting money, which could have also some maybe have some possibility for errors, right? And they kind of took that away. At the same time, maybe tellers who did not have good social skills were probably in trouble, right? So I think maybe the question is now with these AI systems are getting now better and better, even with having some simulating some social skills or simulating interaction. Like now you have also the machine call, you call let's say a center for service, and you get some kind of machine that takes your let's say complaint. So now the question is what kind of skills we want to train people right now so they can work better with these new systems. For example, maybe many universities now probably are concerned, and I'm including me as well when we were teaching about how the students will be using ChatGPT in answering assignments outside the restricted, limited, let's say the classroom. Like I have in my courses, for example, that I taught taught in Exeter, data science, where we give students about a month to work on a project, which is trying to capture real life, where you have a project, you can have access to online forums to ask questions. I forgot what it, Stack Overflow, for example, you can ask things, and because this is how data scientists do their jobs. But now they have access to ChatGPT, they can actually copy-paste the question and get like a near perfect answer. So then the question is, what should we do, right? And of course, I don't think the answer is that universities should just shut down ChatGPT or prevent students just from using it. I think they have to learn how to teach students to work with it, right? How to teach them skills that would help them work better with it and perform better with it. Because these systems, I mean, even though that they hallucinate now, they probably are getting better and better, and maybe your jobs in the future will involve working with these models.
Thank you, Edmond. Wayne.
I've been listening to my colleagues with interest, and I'm sorry, I found something to disagree with everybody so far, but I'm not going to be specific at the moment. But what I want to do is to address three things. So firstly, I think a way of looking at AI and its interaction with people and people's interaction with AI from where the interaction is quite direct, where I use a piece of AI, through to where the AI is being used for something that's less direct. So for example, the use of AI to monitor and help understand climate change and water shortages and deforestation. So there's a spectrum. And for me, the work with AI at that end of the spectrum, the more indirect end, I think is amazing. And we need more of it, and it's very exciting. But I have a huge worry at the other end of the spectrum when there's a direct interaction between us and AI. So that was my first point. My second point is that when we talk about AI and education, higher education, there are many, many slices that we can refer to. So, broadly, obviously, we can talk about administration of the university. We can talk about teaching and learning. We can talk about research. I'm sure there are others, but we'll stick with those three. I think with administration, there are clearly some ways in which these tools can be useful, but equally they can be very dangerous. So for example, using AI for admissions purposes, where the AI systems manage to focus in on things that we really don't want it to focus on, but we have no choice if we're going to use that system, and we have no understanding of what it's actually doing. But I think the administration work with AI for administration, is going to grow. As I mentioned yesterday, I think it's like we think of the Californian gold rush, where it wasn't the people who dug for the gold who made the fortune, it was the supporting industries. And I think that's going to be the case here. AI for research, I think, is profoundly important. There's a huge range of ways in which that's being used, and it's beyond me. My colleague here is far better qualified to talk about that than I am, but I think it's very important, and we should have more of that. But AI for teaching and learning, that's where my big worry really lives. And I think the problem is that there is a huge gap, particularly talking about LLMs, a huge gap between the appearance of the information that it provides and the fact that it looks accurate and true and comprehensive, and the reality that it is none of those things. And my worry is that when we engage with it, as an expert in my field, I engage with an LLM, it generates text in response to my prompt, and as an expert in my field, I can see the errors, I can see the superficiality, I can see the omissions. But often my students can't, because they don't have that expertise. But the problem is that the output looks as if it's real, as if it's accurate, as if it is accurately representing knowledge. And, for me, it really is not doing any of those things. So for me, we really have to be so careful about this. And that is what we should be doing in higher education, I believe, is working with our students, not to say you shan't use these tools, because I'm very happy for my students to use these tools, but that we should encourage them to use them with a real critical eye making sure that anything that they generate with these tools, they then cross-check using other methods. I just think that's really important. If we don't achieve that, then I think we have a huge problem. And one final note, when we're looking at what these tools generate, the appearance is also that it's neutral. It is not neutral. It is information that's under the control by massive, heavily funded, mostly American, but some Chinese and a few minor other ones as well, corporations who control these things. And what they give the appearance that we start with the human, what we can do, we use these tools and they open up a huge vista of new things that we couldn't do before. That may be true, but the problem is it's a very constrained vista, and it ignores a huge range of other things, other ways in which we might do things. So I think that understanding the control that the commercials have over the information that these tools present is fundamentally important, and our students really need to be aware of that too.
Ewan. Minoru.
I'm just wondering how to explain my position. Anyhow, first of all, let me explain my standing point. I'm mainly the robotics researcher, roboticist. But actually, I do not discriminate between AI and robotics. Robotics does not exist without AI. AI does not exist with the real embodiment. That's my point of view. First of all, I'd like to mention that before, people suppose that the human being is here, subject, and the object is here. So the human subject can control object, everything, all the time. But now the object, AI and robotics. So AI and robotics can decide by themselves, decision making already. Therefore now it's very difficult. The human beings control everything, all things of the AI and the robotics. So now it's time to change your mind. So human beings and the robotics AI is equal opportunities, equal level. So we'll live together. That's my point. As the chat GPT, the Paolo mentioned, it's very, very high capability. But not everything is perfect. Sometimes failure, sometimes mistakes, but similar to the human beings. But therefore, my point is, the human species and AI robotics, I just say robot species, they are living together. That's my point. So in that sense, we should think about how to, how to collaborate, how to communicate with the AI and the robotics. So therefore, for me, I'm the robotics researcher, therefore I can design the robots and the AI together and realize the real embodiment, something like that one. But the designer robotics researcher should think about not simply the functionality of the robot, but also how this functionality affects the society from the beginning. So in that sense, the ethical issue and also the legal issue should be considered from the beginning. So nowadays, the legal system is suppose that human beings, the perfect, the object is here. All the time, responsibility is human beings. But now, the AI and the robotic system can decide by themselves. Therefore, we should think about some responsibility of the AI robotics. Not exactly the same as the humans, but some different way. But anyhow, some concept should be shared. Come on. So that's my point. Therefore, there are many challenges. So some practical issues in Japan is that Japan is very high aging societies. Many senior people are living alone. Therefore, we need some help from the AI robotics system, not only the physically, but also the mentally. So the mental system is very important to communicate. So Paolo mentioned some sort of correlation between the spending the money and the suicide and something. So therefore, I just impressed by that result. So technology should assist to this aspect. not the correlation like this one, but the opposite situation. That, if technology the increase, the number of the society the decrease. That's my either point. Anyhow, we robotics designer or AI researcher should think about this kind of issues of the equal opportunity, and also the ethical and the legal issues should be considered from the beginning.
Well, yeah, so there are lots of ideas or lots of specific points on the table for us to think about in terms of developing this kind of interface, LLM, through which the university can share more effectively what we actually produce here as an academic community, and the way to communicate that with users, our students, and outside the university, keeping in mind the challenges that Wayne puts on the table about the answers that these systems can provide. So that would be one issue. Yesterday, we released at our university our guidelines for the use of this kind of systems in class. No? So that was something that our community received yesterday from the university, and it was a good timing to do so together with this conference. And it goes more or less in the lines that Wayne was addressing, like obviously not closing to the opportunity, but doing so with many critical reflections on mind, and to work with the students to walk with the students in the use of these responses. What do you do with these responses from LLMs in general? And but we obviously have to keep up to date and have our students, at the edge of the technical use of certain tools in all the disciplines, not only the architecture and design. I think that we have to have our students use these tools and know and be aware of what's going on and what they can do with them. And then I was thinking about, having robots around campus, giving, advice to students about the courses that they might take in the following year, or simply telling them what, or reminding them what they have to do in the following week, or helping the community in general to solve any kind of administrative kind of thing that they have to do, no? And maybe enrollment, and maybe in the selection of courses and so on and so forth can be done with robots walking about campus and interacting with us, solving specific administrative issues. That would be interesting if we can see it in the future. So I wonder if you could give us some sense of what is going on at your universities or the universities that you interact with. What's going on, specific examples that you could give us about good practices and bad practices that you see not in your own research, but maybe your colleagues or somebody else in the university is doing something very interesting, teaching, or very interesting in research, either of these two areas. So what could you share with us, some insights from your colleagues back at your home universities?
Well, there are some projects that I cannot talk about because I am under NDA, so there is not disclosure agreement. But let me talk about general use of it. Basically, what we are looking now, it's, before we invented the press, every book was strictly on the surface where it was written. No? Every writer has one copy. Then the press multiplied that kind of information, and we can do the same things, especially in humanities, because we have this system that can simply extract this kind of information and collect them in a really easy way for human review. So it's not a substitution of the human research, but is in some way what we can call an amplifier of human research. So actually you can, for example, with one click, collect all the sources that, just to remain in the biblical field, are connected or commenting or in some way reflecting on that biblical verse. And you can apply to law, you can apply to philosophy, you can apply to patristical source and what else. Or you can use AI, and there is these interesting things, for example, in all the research that is about nuclear fusion. There is a lot of interesting research on how to use AI to simple collect and analyze data that help to simulate fusion before you go inside the fusion chamber. That cost a lot energetically speaking. And so you can use AI to modelize what you will find in reality. And this is really breakthrough for research. Another thing is in biology, because one of the strange things that it's happening now after AlphaFold, the system that simple can predict the geometrical shape of a protein by sequencing it. Basically, a protein works in the human body as a nano machine, and the working of the protein is connected to the shape of the protein, because the protein makes something in the body. Well, you can simulate it with a high accuracy before going deeply in the research. And so you can maximize the effort with this kind of system. So you are pushing a lot on the simulation side, helped with AI, and then you go later on the production side much more or less. And this is a Japan style, actually. The Japan engineer school told us that much more we do before we go in production, less it costs and much more we achieve. And so this idea that now is enhanced by a machine is going in a lot of projects inside the university. The other things, one other project, but I cannot tell you a lot on that for a lot of reasons, is about the ability to understand how a source is manipulated in the diffusion inside the internet. So you can have with the AI a sort of analysis on how the news is spread, is touched, is retouched, or is modified from the original sources. And it's really powerful, especially, next year we face United States election, European Union election, and so the political challenge by a so connected society and the spreading of news that can produce public opinion is really high. The last project that I would like to mention is about mental health, because mental health and the elderly, Italy is like Japan. We are the two people with the most, two countries with the most elderly. And taking care of the elderly, it could be made with the jump that the healthcare can make with AI, it's impressive. Actually, the expectancy of life now in Italy is 83. The last survey that was made in the country told us that the Italian believe that you became old at 84, 1 year after you died. But actually you live up to 83 in an average. And from 55, you are treated with at least 3 drugs. And one of the most challenging things for public health is that when you have some medical condition that are chronic medical condition, the ability to stitch to the therapy give you a totally different outcome on the quality of life and expectancy of life. So what we have now is that people, especially when they get old, do not stitch to the therapy. They get to the chronically point of needing care, and they consume a lot of resource, degrade the quality of life, and make a huge problem for public health. So making AI as a tools to allow people to stitch to therapy, it's a huge saving of money. It's a huge bump in quality of life of people. It's a huge, impressive help for the public health system like the one that is in Italy.
Do you hear me? So in my case, for example, I'll be talking a little bit about some of the independent workshops that I've conducted in the past during AI evolution. And I want to talk about these because specifically the people who join these are actually from different backgrounds. They don't have any uniformity in terms of, they're not all architects. So there's artists, there's designers, there's musicians, there's really people just out of interest. They want to learn about AI. So the projects that I've seen grown from these, also I cannot be very specific about names and students, but some of the projects that I've seen are quite exciting at the end of the day whenever they finish up and learning about these tools. So one of them, one of the people that I encountered that learned about AI tool was an architecture student, but he had an interest in data science and programming, etc. So at the end of the day, he was able to produce his own app from everything that he learned. And that was for me like a point where I realized this tool is, once you, like, based on your interest, you'll be able to develop it as much as possible to your own projects. So that was for me like quite exciting point to see during this year. Another one was a musician. She wanted to create her own album cover for something that, a simple example. And back in the day, I think you would go for an artist and you would be able to ask him to, or ask her to produce your own covers, etc., all digital works. But at the end of the day, she was able to produce all of her works, and it was an exciting project for her and for me just to see that she was able to do that using an AI tool, even though it was a very minimal example. But that's as well is another show for creativity using AI, that you're able to grasp it without the need to go to a lot of third-party situations. So I know it also raises question for artists in general, like it's taking the work, etc. So that's another discussion to have. But at the end of the day, having this tool available to you can help you a lot with your own project. And also in terms of creativity and your own self-expression, you have more control over it than having a third party trying to express something as an artist. So these are some of the things that came to my mind from your question. Thank you.
My answer is going to be a little bit in a different direction. My understanding is about the practices, and I want to talk about this problem that I think exists in many universities, which is like focusing on the single discipline. Like, you know, like we have departments of mathematics, economics, computer science, sociology, and very much people, like faculties who are being hired, they are hired to be as belonging to that discipline. And with the advancement of AI as a technology, I think it probably, maybe it's similar to other technologies in this, but maybe it really highlights how complex the issues that are related to it, which includes issues that you really need to have training as well in ethics and anthropology and culture and sociology in order to really work on these systems. And what we have is basically, we have departments of computer scientists who are working on machine learning and data science and developing tools. And then we have departments in sociology and economics and let's say social sciences who are trying to study these systems. Probably don't have enough maybe technical background to understand it completely, but we have this kind of like a very like an emphasis. This is an emphasis in academia about that you need to have this academic identity that makes you belong to one department. And of course, when you try to become interdisciplinary, because really this is what you need to be to be working on AI in today's world, that you need to have a little bit knowledge about everything. And as a scientist, you should not be just confined to one specific field. So in this case, if you try to be more interdisciplinary, you might lose your academic identity, and this could actually affect your career, right? Like, you know, all of us, we're on the job market at some point, and we noticed in the academic job market, it's really a challenge that if you are too interdisciplinary, this could actually play against you, right? And I think, you know, if you're like a computer scientist, but you work on psychology questions, then you're gonna be in trouble because you're not gonna find a place in either department. So I think some departments have started, you know, or some universities started creating colleges, research centers, you realize in these research centers, basically the members are basically people who come from these other single discipline departments again. Maybe some of them do have, I think what needs to be is that, the positions that are specifically targeted at people with interdisciplinary backgrounds, that there should be more encouragement of this. There should be more, they are looked down on as being not very proper. If you're not a proper computer scientist or a proper economist, then that is kind of seen in a like a bad way, or like seen that as if like you're not really competent at your job. And I think universities should cultivate this maybe image of the interdisciplinary scientist and encourage more collaboration. I think at University of Exeter, for example, I could see a lot of like a tendency to collaborate and cooperate with people from other departments as well, which is I guess like a short-term solution.
Yeah, and that, you are in a business department, right? And so what kind of challenges have you encountered in terms of this multidisciplinarity, very business-focused colleagues? Do you interact with them or not really, or are you kind of the crazy guy in the department? Or?
So in the business school, of course, it's a little bit, I would say it's more interdisciplinary than in the other departments or other schools usually, because also there is a kind of a focus on what makes things, what is really important for the market, for industry. So I think in that term, business schools were, let's say, better at this aspect, but at the same time, they're also focused on what is actually useful for industry. There are still many things that are probably not directly, let's say, relevant for industry that don't get their space at the university.
When you have any thoughts on this?
You asked the question, what's happening in our universities?
Right.
And no thanks to me, my university likes to pride itself as being one of the top universities in the world, okay? It's not doing anything like this. And I think that's shocking. I think, having this event, exploring these issues is really fundamentally important, but UCL, we're not doing that. We are doing two things. One, we have, the university has set up a series of working groups who are looking at the impact of these new technologies on various aspects of the university, such as assessment, which is, was one of the big things that everyone was nervous about when ChatGPT burst onto the scene. So that's quite useful, that's quite important. But the more important work that we are doing is known as change makers. And this is, I think there's something like 22 projects across the university that are all run by students with the support of a member of faculty. And these projects are funded. And what the projects are investigating is entirely up to the students. And the issues range from the ethics of AI, the use of AI for feedback, the use of AI to support teachers developing courseware, and the range is immense, and I can't remember all of them. But I think that's quite a useful one, because it's coming from the student's perspective with the support of faculty. And I say the university are taking it seriously in the sense that they are putting money into that, so that the students can actually buy into resources and actually investigate what's really happening out there. So I think that kind of thing is definitely worth doing. But again, I congratulate Ibero on this kind of event, really important, and I'm going to be taking it back to UCL and encouraging that we should do something similar.
Thank you, Wim. Professor?
Okay, I suppose that the question is some AI research investment in the university, or what kind of the research, teaching style involving the AI. Actually, I have not such experience, but my friend using some sort of the classroom support system for the support teacher, watching the students, the behavior, and something. That's the kind of the privacy issue that happened. So therefore, in my university, actually I belong to two universities. One is very new university, international professor, University of Technology in Osaka. And another one is still Osaka University. I have working for more than 30 years. Anyhow, so actually I have not experienced such a project, but instead I like to mention the learning support system for the elementary school students, not the university students. So that's my colleague, Hiroshi Ishiguro. He is famous for his Android, but also he invented some kind of the robots attachment with the students, with that accelerate, encourage the student mind, the motivation, increase the motivation. And also another guy using some very stupid robot. So between the robots and the students teaching each other, and the robot forget something or mistake, and then students teach the robot. So the mutual teaching, also the motivate, to increase the motivation of the students. So such a kind of system is still, the designer intentionally, the robot fail, something like that one. But what kind of failure or mistake increase the student motivation, still one of the research issues. So another one is, maybe the ASD people like to talk with the robot much more than the normal people. So still the robotics researcher and the psychologists working together. What kind of robot behavior induces the behavior, social behavior from ASD people? But still, that's the research issues. What kind of robot behavior induces some pro-social behavior of the ASD people? So that's the kind of issue still should be attacked. And hopefully some current most advanced AI technology can assist this kind of the research question.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I think one thing I would underline about this round of comments is the issue of interdisciplinarity. How the university community has to interact across departments to produce, to engage in projects, and to think about teaching practices and so on. But I have two more questions, and then we will go to the audience for more questions. And the following question is very specific, and I'm wondering about, if you look in any kind of search engine, Google or whatever, and you put artificial intelligence degree, and many responses will be shown on the screen. Degrees in universities, like specific programs on artificial intelligence. So it seems that universities have to offer a degree on artificial intelligence now. So what do you think about that? Is artificial intelligence something that you can teach in one specific degree so that students come out with that specific speciality? Should we enter the race into designing an engineering degree on artificial intelligence, or a multidisciplinary degree on artificial intelligence, so our undergrads enroll into that degree and come out with a title, we say in Mexico, a degree on being a specialist on artificial intelligence? So what do you think about that? Should we do that as universities?
Well, from technological perspectives, we know two kinds of technology: special purpose technology and general purpose technology. A special purpose technology is a piece of technology that with innovation make better one task. So, for example, in agriculture, we invented a different tools up to the drone that is able to cultivate and make it better. But at one point in the history, we developed a new form of technology that we can call general purpose technology. Electrical power is not used to make something, but everything now works with electrical power. When you develop such kind of technology, and AI that is a plural family of technology, is part of this general purpose technology, well, you don't have an impact only in engineering side, but in a lot of different fields. So probably if you go now to an economic school, the cost of energy is part of the program, energetic cost is part of the program, and probably they do not know how to run a cool plant, you know? But something of that energy curriculum has to be involved in. Probably we face the same things, with a difference in which that AI is involved also in automation, and probably we need to shape some curriculum that are interdisciplinary, and then they are applied to the single field of study with a special accent. But the problem is also with the name. What does it mean, artificial intelligence? Is it singular, is plural? Is it unique? We are really focused on generative AI because it's the last toy that we got. But probably, you know, GAN network, like we said yesterday, are really important, and they cannot be confused with an LLM. Or, for example, other tools that now, like, you know, the random forest of other things that are really useful need to be addressed in some way. Of course, if I was enrolled in economy or in a business school, I need some knowledge on artificial intelligence because they will run out some business or change radically other kind of business. And probably I need something that gives me a sense of trustability or trustworthy of the system. But I cannot make an upper mathematical class on statistics, on data scientists, on things like that. We come from a form of university, especially in Italy, that is really vertical, with really deep content. If you do medicine today, AI is there. You cannot ignore it. But a medicine curriculum is so complex, so high, so huge, you cannot add simple and a half of mathematical curriculum to medicine. So it's a problem, but the real problem is that probably this kind of technology are running too fast. We got these results now in 2023, and we are expecting them not before than 2030. And this is impressive, because we have the last GPT, November 2022. OpenAI was acquired by Microsoft January 2023, and all the product line of Microsoft now include GPT. So this is a so fast transformative process, and universities are a little bit conservative, and they have to be. And so the tension of your question is the tension in the answer. I agree, we don't have to run back the last fancy things, but we are a university. We cannot stop to reflect on topic. And probably we have to make some try, we have to make some kind of experiment and correct them. So to make a short answer to your question, it's not time for a single degree, it's time for contamination.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with what you said. And I think AI is so broad. It's a family, like you mentioned, but it's also, I mean, there's machine learning, there's deep learning, there's a lot of things to take into account to all mix it all together in one degree. It's so broad that you need to be, super specific. But in terms of medicine or architecture major or business or really any other major that can be helpful to use AI inside, I think it will organically be embedded into the curriculum itself. Like this technology is evolving so fast, now just having this event makes, it's a big show that universities and the educational system is already thinking about AI. Like this is a huge first step to start thinking how to embed it into your curriculum. And the next step would be to be more specific on each specific major, how to use that and how to make students be aware of the use, the ethics, etc., like ChatGPT. I mean, the list is really endless. But the way to see it is just to, one, absorb this technology. It's fine to stand off a little bit and try to observe it first and see the negatives and the positives and then incorporate it. Even though it's moving on too fast, I think organically it will also move on fast into to be embedded into each of these majors that we we're talking about. So yeah, that would be also my short answer. Thank you.
Hello. Yes. I also concur with my colleagues, panelists, and I think creating a degree or a program is basically called AI is falling into the same trap of this single discipline situation. I think there should be some courses on AI maybe, and students should be able to sample and take the courses that would shape their own curriculum. Like there shouldn't be a specific degree for AI. It should be like, each student should be able to shape their own kind of degree that combined different courses that could they found helpful and they found that they kind of fit their own interest. Now, as well, as I said, as well, and my colleague said as well, is that AI is not really just about the techniques and these methodologies and algorithms. It's also have all these related issues of sociology and ethics and society and culture. Now, this is one point. I want to talk also about another point, which is that when you talk about teaching AI, what are you also teaching as well? Because there is now like some sort of a divide or tension in the AI community between people who do machine learning and people who do other kind of techniques, right? And especially those who use symbolic AI, which is like the older form of formal models and knowledge representation, which are now not very popular. And of course, you could see how, because now machine learning is all the rage and deep learning especially, that everyone wants to do that, everyone wants to focus on that, with not much love for with the other techniques outside machine learning. And I think this is kind of ironic in a way, because at some point in the 90s, with the AI second winter, people were struggling with neural networks. Like neural networks, which is basically the foundation of the deep learning today, was actually struggling during that time. And part of the reason is we didn't have enough computational capabilities for them to be actually built on a larger scale. So at that point, many people gave up on neural networks. They said, this is not a technique. In fact, actually, two prominent computer scientists wrote a whole book to just shoot it down. They shut down neural networks completely, that they cannot do even an exclusive OR, like they kind of, and here we are, 20 years later. Now, neural networks are basically one of the most successful. They're basically leading all the advancement in AI. And this basically drove a lot of people to just completely focus on that, right? So you have PhDs that are being in machine learning, where students almost exclusively learn about deep learning, and they use deep learning in their own techniques without really paying attention to other, outside machine learning, other non-machine learning techniques in AI. And I think that is kind of harmful, because I don't think the next breakthrough is going to come from just scaling up. I mean, a lot of smart people think that this is actually enough, that the next breakthrough will come from just scaling up resources and computational resources, that we're going to get maybe some common sense and then maybe conscience and all of these things. I don't think this is going to be enough just by scaling up the resources. I think there should be other other techniques that will be used. Some people talk about neurosymbolic, talking about including structure, using other techniques. So I think also when you want to offer courses about AI, even though everyone wants to learn about machine learning and deep learning especially, I think they should be also focused on other less popular techniques, because some of these could be the potential, and also building foundations in mathematics and physics, and as well like sociology and ethics.
I'm really happy when any expert in any university wishes to develop a course to explore any subject that they're interested in. I think that's what we're all about. But I do agree, as the other speakers have said, that it's important that we don't think of AI as something separate. AI is not this thing that floats above us. It's always applied in certain circumstances. I mean, there is some pure AI research, I get that, but apart from that, it's always applied in some area. And so I think there should be a focus on those different areas and the impacts. But having said that, I think the really important thing is I don't really mind what the degree is. I think it's fundamentally important that we don't just focus on the technology. That the course, whatever it is, also has to focus on the human impacts of those technologies. Even for our computer science colleagues, right? If you're learning something about computer science, I think it's crazy that still a lot of the time the question is, how do I do this? So here's a problem, how do I address this problem using my skills as a computer scientist? What we should be encouraging those computer science students to do in the first instance is to ask the question, why am I using this technology to address this particular issue? Is this the appropriate way to go? Should we be looking at other alternatives before we begin to look at the technology? So, yeah, in summary, I'm really happy. I think if people are interested, then let's develop the degrees. And to give you one example of this, again at UCL, they now have a master's degree in AI and the Sustainable Development Goals. I think that's terrific, right? It's a focus not just on what AI can do, but also a focus on what AI is doing, both positive but also negative. So Sustainable Development Goals, going back to climate change, as has been said, yes, there are important projects out there that are using AI technologies in order to better understand climate change and to identify ways in which we can mitigate it, prevent it, slow it down, etc. But there are also people looking at, well, what is the impact of running these models on energy use? And, ChatGPT, for example, I can't remember the exact figures, but it's something like every time we ask a question of ChatGPT, it uses a litre of water in the background. That's a huge impact. And I'm not saying therefore don't use it, I'm saying we need to be investigating these things. So yes, absolutely. Let's have lots of different degrees looking at different aspects. The multidisciplinarity that we've heard about before, the different subjects that's been mentioned, but let's ensure that any study of these technologies always really focuses on the human impact. And I mean focus. So there is a classic course that some of you might have seen called Elements of AI from Finland, and it's all about how AI works. And in the last 5 minutes, it's what about the ethics bias. That's not enough. That's a tokenism. That's crazy. We really need to think about it every step of the way. The expression is ethics by design. Thinking about the impacts at the beginning of the process, not waiting to find the problems as they've occurred and try and sort those problems backwards. So it's thinking about these things in advance.
Thank you.
The question is, the result was the difficulty to giving the degree of the AI in the university, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I suppose that much more serious is other disciplines. Because, too much expectation with AI, the hype of the AI. So it might be okay, not so serious among the ordinary people. But now the expert, some researchers saying using AI, what kind of method? They don't mention, using AI, I can solve this one. So therefore, nowadays, it's very, I'm just worrying about, the giving the degree to the other, not only the AI, but other disciplines. Because as mentioned already, many people mentioned the interdisciplinary is only the super surface. So in Japan, we have the existing universities, the vertical structure, each the schools and the department, and they know that the very serious issue of some vertical, the very high walls among them. So therefore, some horizontal structure all the time, but very specific, superficial. It doesn't work. So I suppose maybe it's now time to organize the structure of the university itself. University is just the universal means, but it means also the interdisciplinary, essential one. But the current structure in Japan, especially, still the vertical structure very strong. So I suppose maybe the issue is not simply the difficulty of giving the degree of the AI, but the whole structure of the university. It should be the time to think about the change.
Right, thank you. Yes, here in Mexico, we're also, very organized in very vertical ways across departments or in departments, and we need to have more interconnections. And so your answer is very clear, and it's unanimous, and that's very useful. My final question. So how the universities of the not so distant future look like in the AI era? So are traditional universities such as this one, filled with humans and human professors, threatened? Will we, as professors, be replaced by robots teaching, giving the lecture and conducting the workshops and so on and so forth? So will traditional universities be substituted by transnational tech companies owning, educational projects or educational offers online to the entire world? How do you see it?
Well, we are not in a Black Mirror episode, so I think that we can be positive. I was part of the discussion when MOOC arise, massive online open courses, that seems to destroy all the university around the world. Well, the thing was that 99.5% of people that enroll the MOOC don't go beyond the third lecture. So there is something that was not working at that time, and it's probably the digital interaction with the knowledge. Because, when we talk, I work for a Jesuit institution too. So when we talk about a university, we talk not only about a transmission of knowledge. It's not a download of some knowledge to some brain, but it's a interpersonal relationship. And is a taking care of the human being as it is to allow her or him to be the best version of himself or herself. So, and this is a mission more than a budget inside a business. Well, this vocation of the university, probably it will be the face of the university that will remain tomorrow. The university that continue to ask to themselves, what is my mission, why I'm here? Why I ask to someone to spend their own life, working life, making the professor? It's because there is something good in the new generation that we would like to contribute to give to the world. And in that sense, I think that AI will be really positive for higher education in general, because it's a challenge, and we need to face the challenge. We need to define once again what is our mission, what does it mean to be would like to be a university. And I don't think that any, competitional model, Homo sapiens versus Machina sapiens, will succeed. Okay, there is no, a robotic version of me that I have to fight. But probably the professor that is not using well AI will be extincted by the professor that is able to use AI to be a better teacher. And this is a problem, because we are the generation of teachers, of professors that has not someone to look at. We have in some way to make experiment, and probably we have to say, I'm sorry, I make a mistake a lot of time, but we have to have this time also to make an experiment. And this is important, because this is a needing of an alliance between the single professor and the university. So the structure of the university should guarantee some spaces in which experimentation, attempt, failure, and thinking again on topics could be possible. There are sections inside the university in which there is too much competitive on publish, on be, on impact factor and things like that, and don't leave any space for that. So this is a challenge, especially in the country in which university is a huge market with a huge money, and this is much more compelling. So I don't know how it will be in short term. I know that it will be transformative, and I, as a professor, take care of the human part of this transformation?
I think in the very near future, there will be a hybrid workflow between AI and the educational system in general, just like any other, even in the professional world as well. There will be this hybrid workflow everywhere. So I don't think there will be a lot of jobs being replaced, etc. It will be more of evolution of roles, evolution of different positions, etc. And also, as you were mentioning as well, there will be, if anyone is not using AI, a teacher or a student, even I think in the future there will be a lot of incorporation into the projects as well. So, as I was mentioning, it's like a bullet train. If you don't really get on board, you're gonna miss out the destination. So it applies to everything really, but in the very, very distant future, I don't want to sound grim, but I do think that there is a possibility that there won't be any need to go to an educational system anymore. You will be doing everything from your own comfort, etc., like a home education or etc. So there is this huge question that I think it is a possibility. I cannot predict the very distant future, but there is this potential. And also I understand the sentimentality and the attachment of the educational, just being in a university, living here every day, meeting your teacher. The social interaction is very important. But as I see how things are escalating quite fast in the very far future, I think these will be changed. Even as an architect, maybe you will have a different mindset of how to create projects, etc. So I cannot predict, but there is a very chunk of potential that things might shift in another direction.
Edmond?
I mean, on the subject of MOOCs, when the massive online
Open course.
online courses, when they came out, some people speculated that maybe they could be used in a way where you put the videos in class and you're the teacher is facilitating, maybe going through. You basically pick, maybe you adapt the course, maybe you pick which videos are being shown, maybe you do, maybe you provide the exercises, maybe you provide answers to the students. And honestly, I would have probably very much liked that as a lecturer, is to provide that, because some of these courses, maybe some of these were not really prepared. They were prepared for the public. They were prepared for people who did not have any background. But for those who were actually prepared for people with some background, I mean, if you have someone, let's say if I'm teaching a course about algorithms, and you have the top scientist that, in algorithms, he's teaching that course, then who am I to teach it in a better way? So, but of course, at the same time, it doesn't mean that I should just copy the same content. Maybe I can adapt it. So I guess in the same line as my first answer to your question about the basically changing roles, I think the lecturer's role is going to be, maybe it's going to be changing in terms of what they are teaching, right? Or the way they are conducting their teaching. So it's not necessarily giving the lecture. I think maybe it would turn into more a facilitator of the class, a person who helps you to learn, right? So you could say, yes, you could learn by yourself at home. I kind of doubt right now that this is gonna, universities don't cease to exist and people will learn online alone, because until today, I mean, people still want to get degrees and they think degrees are important, right? And you have you have a trademark, brand name of universities. There is also the chance of meeting people, the chance of interacting with people, networking, having the university life experience, and these are all part of the learning process. It's not really about just the lectures that you learn in class. It's really about going on this journey yourself and maybe with your colleagues, working together with others, by yourself. So to me, I think there are some aspects, the business-related aspects, which is like, the need to have a degree in order to get a job, right? And then of course, you have examples like Elon Musk come and say, I will not require a degree for hiring and these kind of things. And maybe some people will follow suit. They might say, we don't need a degree anymore. We just need to see that you can do the job. so that might lead people to change, but I think I don't see this happening anytime soon. So I think universities will still exist, but probably I think the teachers or lecturers will maybe change their roles, change the responsibilities in class. And I think we should be building on other people's work as well. I mean, I don't want to build my lecture slides from scratch, right? I want to build on other people's, and especially on the most, less people who are doing that most advanced research.
There's a book by a Chinese-American AI expert called Kai-Fu Lee, and I think it's called Artificial Intelligence 2041, something like that. The point is, in this book, he looks at multiple different scenarios, areas in which AI might have an impact, and one of them is education. And so clearly I read this chapter with interest, and I was never so frightened by what I read in that chapter and the kind of things that not only was he predicting, but what he was arguing for. Now, I think where we have to start from is the recognition that today, and in my opinion, and I'm willing to put money on this, in my lifetime, there is no AI system at all that is capable of the kind of interaction that a human teacher can give. Doesn't have their capacity for understanding, their capacity for emotional connection, their capacity for working with an individual student. So that just doesn't exist. It will not exist in my lifetime. I'm absolutely convinced of that. But that's not the question. The question is not, is it capable of overturning education? The question is, will it? And I think that is a much more important question. And it's a question of politics, power, commerce, and the push that we're having. In the UK, our Prime Minister and our Education Minister have both been calling for more use of AI in education, and they mean K-12. Based on what? There's no evidence that these tools do anything effective. There's no evidence that these tools are safe. So why are we calling for this? It doesn't matter what I think. They're the ones with the power, and they're being lobbied constantly by the commercial players. So is it possible from a capability perspective that universities will be changed beyond recognition, as you described? I'm not convinced. Will we have this continual pressure to do so? I think that's happening already, and we need to be really, really careful about that.
As I mentioned, one of my colleagues, Hiroshi Ishiguro, he is very famous for his Android. He has already started his project by making his avatar by using a ChatGPT, the personalized. He inputted his talks and papers and so on, and characterized, and then already started to give his talk or lectures. So that's already started. That's the one story. So another story, not a story, another one is that, as you know, 94.7% professors answered to the question, are you above the average? So 94.7% professors suppose that they are above the average. It's statistically incorrect. So the so positive sense, probably the evolutionary to survive anyhow. So therefore, as I mentioned, the professors should change according to the technology advance. Therefore, still some human factors remains, but also the human factors should adapt to the change of the technologies. So the professors should change, should be adapted to the technological change. But also, at the same time, professors can design the technologies, which direction we should go. So therefore, the both together should be considered.
Okay, lots of food for thought for all of us. So I think we have some time for taking a couple of questions from the audience. So if you could, somebody could help us with the mic, yeah? And there's already a hand, a couple of hands I see already. Si la pregunta es...
Sí, nada más les vamos a decir que sea corta la pregunta para que tengan muchas oportunidades de preguntar.
Thank you very much. I was concerned, well, I'm concerned about this possibility of using artificial intelligence to provide a broader spectrum of studies for the common people, people that has no access to great universities like this one, because university studies are expensive for regular people. So is it possible to see that it helps, like, democratize education?
Sí, yeah, 3 at a time.
Hi, well, thank you for this great panel, and congratulations for being here. Right now we are seeing that it's actually like the big techs that are doing like most of the research and the development of AI. We have OpenAI, Microsoft, Google doing all the research. So I would like to know, how accessible is it for universities to have this information of what they're doing and actually like analyzing it and giving your opinions on it? And a little bit, a second question, but it's kind of related. What are the risks of having only big techs developing AI and not really universities?
Hi, thank you. My question is a bit off topic, but still related with something that was said, which is from the sustainability point of view. We already know that data servers around the world are among the top 10 industries that uses energy and water resources. So my question is, you think if this projection of growth for AI is going to be limited by the use of water resources? I've seen that some projections says that 30% of the water usage in the world, probably like in 10 years, is going to be destined only to, for cooling off the data centers. I believe somewhere between 25 million liters a day are being used for a single building of data servers. So imagine this multiplied by all times. And we already seen this problem, like, for example, in Uruguay, which there was a data center from Google that was canceled because of the drought. And we're seeing we're already seeing the droughts all around the world, and we're also seeing that we're experiencing the heat waves around the world because of the greenhouse emissions, and we know that 85% of the energy comes from fossil fuels. So we're basically energy and water. So is this going to be a problem for the future, for the expansion of the development of AI?
Okay, thank you. So we're going to take these 3, and then we'll have another round. Okay. So freely, anyone who wants jumps in. So we have the question about democratization and access, and the possibility that this will open the access more than limited. The big tech monopoly on the development of technologies and so forth, and the sustainability challenges. So who wants to jump in?
I can talk about the first question.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, I think we all agree that even before AI, like maybe search engines and Google have democratized knowledge, right? It made it more, like made it easier for people to reach out for knowledge, right? To Google information, to learn about things, maybe to, you know, to able to access things much more than, I mean, I'm talking as well, I mean, there are levels of democratization as well, right? If you don't have access to internet, that's a different story, right? So, of course, ChatGPT is also like maybe taking this even a step further, or other LLMs models taking this step further by giving you even an easier way to, or maybe, I don't know if easier, maybe allegedly, could be maybe even harder. But, you know, it's also kind of democratizing this knowledge in some sense. But at the same time, I think there are some dangers to this as well. Because basically, if you think about large language models which have been trained on basically knowledge existing on the internet, and this basically builds on top of the crowdsourcing, right? If we think about it, like all of this, the reason these LLMs work is because we had crowdsourcing, successful crowdsourcing projects before, things like Wikipedia and other projects, Stack Overflow. And these, of course, you know, to some degree, they were useful knowledge, but in a way where they were also biased, right? I mean, there is also bias in Wikipedia, who writes the Wikipedia pages, and who actually, and also like the knowledge in terms of studies. For example, most of the social science studies are basically heavily relied on participants from Western countries, especially students from American universities. So a lot of our knowledge in social sciences, sociology and psychology and economics are basically based on a group of people who are very westernized. And the anthropologist John Henrik talks about, he basically helped like create this term of WEIRD as an acronym, Western Educated, Industrialized, Rich Democrat, where he said that this group of people actually, I mean, with all caveat of this term, that they are very different from the rest of the world. So a lot of things that we know about right now and we consider as maybe truth, like some psychometrics text, like Big Five, or some IQ test, they are heavily basically created by Western researchers, and they were verified using Western participants, right? But and we built all these kind of inferences about how they make generalization about how we humans think about things, right? Based on this special group, right? But in reality, this group like represent about maybe 15% of humanity, right? There is a lot of, like one example of thing is like the analytical thinking versus holistic thinking, that people in Western society think in terms of, you have an analytical thinking, they break things down into smaller parts, while in other places they think more about relationships. Now, if I'm trying to now understand something about how humans think, or things about our cognition, or our knowledge, or anything about human habits, or about, then if I go to ask ChatGPT, most likely I will get the answers that exist in the academic literature, which are heavily built on people from Western societies, right? And I will take this information and knowledge and accept it as truth to represent all humanity. Now, if you are reading a research paper yourself, maybe you will be able to notice that maybe the group of participants came from these countries. You might have questions about that. But if you're asking ChatGPT or other LLM models, it will actually give you the answer without probably telling you, by the way, there is a caveat, this is not necessarily everyone. So I think it somehow creates a layer that between you and the actual what is happening, right? At the same time, yes, it democratizes knowledge in some level, but it might be also a biased knowledge of who had the, basically, whose cognition and psychology has been captured, and also who had the power and mean to actually contribute to the collective knowledge that we have online.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I don't know. Yes, it's working. Yeah. No, just a short. I take a cross section of the three questions. It's about the 9 companies that are valued more than 1 trillion, and now they are driving the AI. The AI market is driven by 9 companies. The capital market is more than 1 trillion. Well, I think that it's more big the problem than not just simple university. Because, you know, so huge company put a huge stress on the contemporary democratic system that we are used to. A state is used to give 3 things: identity, money, and education, the guarantee of an education and things like that. Well, now this company can give you an identity, and actually you can do more things with Google identity than not with other things. They give you money, and it's the cryptocurrency, and they need employees that has a kind of knowledge that university cannot give, and you can see IBM, for example, that is making pathway to technology, or other big companies that are making some educational program. So the idea that we have this so huge economical superpower in this field can be a huge pressing force to reshape the offering of university. I suspend the judgment. I simply telling you what is happening. You know, they are not able to find people to work for them with the knowledge that they know, that they want, and so they are giving them a special formation for that. The most impressive for me is P-Tech of IBM, because it starts at the last year of a high school and take, instead of a university, these courses, and you go to work for them. So it's like if they are not finding what they want, but it's a world apart. So probably we have to discuss how to coexist with this huge company in a so complex world, but it's bigger than the question that we are facing now.
Well, I'd like to agree with what the 2 speakers have just said. I think these are really, really important issues. And I would reiterate that the notion that these technologies are not neutral. The position, the information they provide, a Google search is not neutral. It really depends on the Google algorithms, and the information that's presented to us often misses other information that, for whatever reasons. So we cannot think of these technologies as being neutral. And as a consequence, the impact on access for people is problematic, because they might be able to access Google's information, but they can't necessarily access the kind of information that they want. And when we talk about the generative AI tools, again, I agree that what they represent is, in a sense, the average of what's out there, the most common thing that's out there in the data that it's trained on. So dominant ideas, such as from the USA, a bit from Europe, and various other places, those ideas are reproduced in the generative AI outputs. But marginalized voices are not. And as a consequence, the marginalized voices are going to become more marginalized over time, not less. So we need to be very, very careful about this. And I also want to pick up on the question about water and other global impacts of these technologies. And I think this is, a set of issues that we're not engaging with sufficiently. We need to be looking at this far more carefully. So I've said, when we educate people about AI, we should be talking about the human impact as much as we're talking about the technologies. But when we're talking about the human impact, it's not just in terms of, is the output of the AI being discriminatory? It's not those kind of things. It is those things, but it's not just that. It's also things like the impact of these technologies on climate change themselves. So I think all of these issues are interrelated. We've got to stop thinking that these technologies are neutral, that they're telling us some version of the truth, and actually be far more critical when we engage with these tools and when we see their outputs. and remember that these tools are simply not neutral.
Okay, maybe we can take then another round before we close the panel.
Do you think the use of ChatGPT is making students lazy or reducing their learning skills?
Okay, thank you. That's a very concrete question. There's a hand on the back.
Thanks. What could be the worst that could happen if we don't regulate AI development?
Can you repeat? Si la puede repetir, por favor, Araceli, gracias.
What do you think that can be the worst that could happen if we don't regulate AI development?
Hello, my name is Alfredo Cruz from Iteso University. I'm not an expert on artificial intelligence, and I want to take advantage of you experts. And if I tell you that you cannot use the word artificial intelligence anymore to define what you have been talking about, and you need to find from 3 to 5 words to define the technology you are talking about, and taking into account that our intelligence has been mediated by artifacts from a lot of time ago, what would you call the core changes on what we are looking at now that was not happening from the 20 years ago, maybe from the robotical change we had in our factories, and we are seeing today? So 3 to 5 words to define something, if you want to bear with me in this game. Thank you.
I will try to translate. If I understand correctly, the last comment is that if you would, what would you call these new technologies without calling them artificial intelligence? Is that, yeah? So, okay. Which other terms would you use to describe these new technologies?
I think that's a great question. I think one of the problems that we have is that questions of intelligence actually come up when these tools are a zillion miles away from being intelligent. And the reason it's called artificial intelligence is historical. The people in 1956, they just wanted to distinguish themselves from an existing field called cybernetics. And they didn't want to call it cybernetics 2.0, so they called it a different thing. They called it AI. So I think that's a huge problem. I think, it depends which type of AI you're talking about. But if we're talking about neural networks and the like, we should call them pattern finding and predicting based on large data sets. It's not a very sexy name, but that's what it does. There's no intelligence in that, and there's no intelligence in what what ChatGPT generates. And I want to come to the question about, does ChatGPT make students lazy? I think smart students will use these technologies critically, and therefore they will derive some benefit. But lazy students who use ChatGPT, they're going to fail in what they're trying to study anyway. So I don't think that's too much of a problem. I think we need to encourage students to actually engage with these tools more critically, and that will benefit their learning and help them better understand their subject and be more successful in what they're trying to study. The second question was about what's the worst thing that can happen if we don't have appropriate regulation. I think the worst thing that can happen, it's funny that I saw a book this morning, which I'm going to buy. I've only read the blurb, but the book is making the point that throughout history, that two economists, throughout history, they're arguing that technology has not naturally ended up in better lives for everybody. Right? It depends on how the technology is being used and who is in control of the technology. So my fear is that the difference between poor and rich that is already too great in our society today will just get bigger because of the ways in which these technologies are being used and being perpetrated by these big corporations. So for me, it's not just about money, it's also about power. So for me, that's the biggest worry.
May I jump in? Aselomu and Johnson, wonderful book, Power and Technology. It's probably the best book that came out in 2023. I strongly suggest. It's a wonderful book with a lot of examples. But I would like to be back to ChatGPT. Please, look at ChatGPT for what it is. What it is. In 2017, Google invented the Transformer. Transformer is a mathematical tool to identify the most important word in a sentence. And in 2018, OpenAI used Transformer to make GPT. T is for Transformer. It's funny. It's made by Google, it's monetized by someone else. Well, but the point is that in 2018, OpenAI was owned by an half by Elon Musk. And the value of an half of OpenAI was $100 million. Well, 2018, Elon Musk made with OpenAI what he made with Twitter. You are not good, I push you out, and push on Sam Altman to resign. Because he saw the Transformer and said Google is winning the race. Well, Sam Altman resist, and Musk take back 100 million. So OpenAI has a huge need to make it visible the kind of research that they are making. At that point, GPT started to become, 2018, a demo for everyone on the ability of AI. ChatGPT is not a product that is designed to go on production. It's a huge demo. Has not to be used for search, for retrieval of information, nothing of that. It's a bot that is needed to show how could be conversational an AI. If you use ChatGPT as Google, you are using the wrong instrument. ChatGPT just would like to talk with you. And if ChatGPT has not a knowledge, it starts to say something just to tell you that he can talk with you. So if you use ChatGPT as an information retrieval, you are making a mistake. January 2023, Microsoft acquired the half of OpenAI, and the value is not anymore 100 million in 3 years, but is 11 billion. So this is the value that is behind. GPT, it's like a drug, you know. GPT is the molecules. ChatGPT is the drugs. With the same molecules, you can make different drugs. Okay, ChatGPT is a demo. GPT system, LLM GPT system, can be used in a recipe with other things to obtain different product. So the smart student is that one that knows the difference and do not use ChatGPT as an informational retriever because it invents in a sophisticated way, but it hallucinates. And all the industrial products with GPT are not chat-like. So please be careful about that, because newspaper and the hype on internet do not help us to distinguish the product. So do not confuse GPT and ChatGPT. I just would like to underline these topics.
I think I would like to jump in on the ChatGPT thing and say that, yes, you are being lazy if you're using ChatGPT, as long as you're just getting the information and not learning from it. But the moment you read into that and you actually do a little bit of research, cross-check, like we were talking before, this is where you're actually doing some work and you're collaborating with the actual tool and you're learning. So the moment you're learning, you're not being lazy. So that's the short answer. And going back to the title for the AI, I think I would call it machine hallucinations. I would be a little bit on the creative and abstract notion. And what was the last question? What was the last one?
Well, that was the last question. The worst thing that
The regulations part, yeah. I think if there are no regulations on AI, there will be a lot of issues like what was mentioned before, but it will be chaos, but it will be as well a lot of legal and ethical issues that will arise as well, more than they are right now with the use of some of the platforms. So on the biases and the data set, apologies, and the copyright issues, I think these are one of the main things that are rising at the moment, and if you don't regulate these or the use as well, there's also the abuse of some of the work that's been set into these libraries for these models. So yeah, that would be a big issue. Thank you.
So about the ChatGPT, that's a big social impact, and also it appears like via the conscious, like this one. So of course, it's easy to deny it. But the point is, how much close, or of course, in the consciousness is a still big question. Therefore, thinking about how the ChatGPT could be conscious is a good insight to rethink about what's the consciousness. So therefore, tomorrow I give some summary of this talk. I'm thinking about the second question, the worst scenario of the AI. So now we are working with researchers with different disciplines, lawyers and cognitive scientists and neuroscientists, of course AI, the robotics researchers, about thinking about how to design the legal system. Usually the legal system is just top-down, just obey something. But then according to the technology advanced. So the legal system also should be adapted to the technology advance. Therefore, now we are thinking about as agile governance. So all stakeholders gather and discuss from the beginning how to design. And also, of course, it's not perfect all the time. Therefore, all the time discuss the issues and change, adapt. That's a new governance system. Now we are thinking about it. Therefore, I believe that we can avoid that worst scenario by using this as agile governance.
Well, thank you so much for this fascinating, rich, dense conversation and discussion. Please, yes. Thank you. Muchas gracias y no olviden que hay talleres todavía por el resto del día. Mañana tenemos 2 conferencias más y más talleres. Entonces, there's more to come. Thank you so much. Gracias.
Les recordamos a las personas que todavía tienen su traductor que recojan sus identificaciones a la salida.